Hey everybody, Rodrigo here. I know I haven't posted on YouTube in a really long time. Things have been crazy. They've been awesome, but they have been a lot more busy than I was when I was first coming out with YouTube videos. So I really wanted to get on here today to release an interview that I had with a really good friend of mine. His name's Curtis Cheng, and his story is incredible. Curtis is diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder, and he has been very gracious to talk to me about it and to allow me to release this. I hope that if you're dealing with that, or if you know someone that's dealing with that, that this conversation helps. All right, without further delay, here's my conversation with my friend Curtis Cheng. Hope you enjoy. Curtis.
Yes.
Thank you for coming today and chatting, dude. I know we've talked about doing this for a couple months now.
Half a year, I think.
Right.
Finally got around to
yes,
it.
dude. I'm excited to dive into deeper because I know that last time we talked, we kind of got into some of the details, but I was hoping to save it a little bit more for this, so that it could be more, we could get into the weeds a little bit more, but. I guess before we get started, I'd love to just ask you to tell, I know a lot about you, but if you could tell everybody about you a little bit more, what you do for work, what you like to do, and stuff like that.
So I'm 38 years old, work as a registered nurse at a hospital in Long Beach. I've been there about 13, going on 14 years. Hobbies, I like to game, play video games, paint. Go to music festivals.
What are you playing right now? What game
Valorant, Overwatch, Marvel Rivals.
Dang. Okay, so all online stuff.
Yeah, all online. Yes. PvP.
Nice.
Very competitive in the lower ranks. Okay. Silver to bronze.
Okay. All right. You're humble, dude. You're humble.
Yeah.
Okay, I know you're also a really awesome musician too. You make some really cool music. You tell us a little bit about that.
So I make trance music. I DJ'd a little bit in my 20s out in LA and Orange County.
Nice.
Have a couple Spotify releases. I took piano, formal training from the age of 5 to 15.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then I quit in high school to focus on sports, essentially.
What did you play?
Water polo, soccer, and swimming.
Nice. Oh, dang, dude, you're in the water.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. And so you've been at Long Beach. You've been there, you said, 13, 14 years?
About 13 or 14 years.
How long have you been in the position you're in right now there?
So I did 9 years on a wound care unit, and then the last 4 years I've been serving as an assistant manager on the floor that I work.
Nice. What floor?
Ortho neuro wound care.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've ever... Maybe I have asked you.
So orthopedics, neurology, and wound care.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. And then you also serve as a nurse at our church too, huh?
Yeah, during the service healthcare ministry. So I'm on standby just in case anything happens.
The scariest thing to do at church.
Thing, right? The worst thing I've had to come across is a paper cut. But
nice.
When I was going to one and all church in San Dimas, I actually had to work up a lady that had passed out, and so we had to call the paramedics because I didn't know what was going on with her.
Yeah,
she was just passed out, high heart rate, tachycardic, 120 heart rate, normal 60 to 100 for an adult.
Wow.
So her heart rate was really high. I think her blood pressure was low.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if she was on medication but everyone was looking at me like, who's this 20-year-old guy coming over here messing with this old lady? I was like, I'm a registered nurse.
That's funny. What church was that?
One and All in San Dimas.
San Dimas.
Jeff Vine's church.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I used to go there in college.
Oh, in college. Got it. That's cool. Yeah, that's another thing. I met Curtis here at our church. We go to a satellite campus in Saddleback Brea, and we've been going to a Bible study together.
Small group.
That's small group, yeah. So we've gotten to get to know each other a lot, but one part of your life that I, didn't really know about until recently, until we decided, hey, we should do a little conversation on this on YouTube.
Yeah.
Was when you were talking to me a little bit about your own mental health journey, and you were telling kind of our whole small group about it, and
small tidbits.
A little bit about it.
Yeah.
Right. And I my ears perked up because, as some people know that, the big reason I started this YouTube channel was because I wanted to share about my mental health journey back in COVID. I experienced crazy amounts of anxiety, and I had like panic attacks every other day. And I went through, after that, I went through some big highs and some big lows. And so my mental health journey has been something I've wanted to share, just because I remember feeling a little bit alone when I was going through it. Not that I've never heard somebody gone through something, but what everybody goes through is so different.
Yeah.
So hearing specific stories, I think, were kind of helpful for me. So I wanted to give you a platform to tell me about your mental health journey. Tell me about it a little bit.
So I have bipolar type 1. Started from when I was a young kid, probably about age 5 or 6. It's like something's wrong with me. That's the thought process that I had. I would just think, hey, like, I'm different. And
at that age, you felt that way?
Age 5, yeah.
Wow.
And I didn't know at the time, but it would set myself up for... In middle school, I had a lot of anxiety, depression, social anxiety. Had a lot of friends, but I never felt like I fit in. I always felt different.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it other than like I didn't belong in a set group of people. I had a lot of friends and people that I called friends, but I couldn't identify with them personally.
Totally.
On like a personal level. So
okay. And sorry to interrupt. What is the difference between bipolar 1 and 2? Tell us about type 1.
So, mania. I will go into mania where I don't sleep for like 3 or 4 days. Go into these episodes where I think I'm like reading people's minds, have mind control, superpowers. Basically think I can control people. I won't sleep. I get irritable. I think so fast that I can't write anything down.
Wow. And
every thought is a good thought.
Right.
So part of it is you feel invincible. It's better than drugs. It's just like the best feeling in the world. After that, you crash and you go into depression where you don't want to do anything for 2 or 3 weeks. So it was just cycles of that constantly. That didn't manifest until I was in college.
I was going to ask you, so around what age did you start experiencing some of those a little bit more? Because you said at 6, you did feel that there was a difference. But it wasn't until college, you said, that you started to notice some of those?
So I started noticing in college, and at that time I had been a cutter since age 14.
Wow.
So I was cutting myself. That's how I essentially numbed the pain. Because the psyche of a cutter is that it's pain that you can control. So I was dealing with my life stressors that way from a young age. So I never developed those good coping habits.
Wow.
So about from age 14 to 24, I was cutting. In college, it manifested as depression. I wasn't diagnosed with bipolar until maybe 23 or 24, but around 21 years of age, I was in a bad relationship. Just psychologically abusive on both ends. I have my faults too. But I was going to a college counselor and they're giving me medication that made things worse, because with bipolar disorder, if you're on antidepressants, it can make things a lot worse.
Oh my goodness. What? So, I mean, you're in a depressive state.
And I was taking
antidepressants
like I should.
Oh my goodness. That's awful.
So, I was on like Paxil and I forget what other medications, Depakote, Zyprexa, antipsychotics, Seroquel.
Wow.
So I didn't get diagnosed until I went to some guy in West Covina. I don't even remember his name. Had me take the test and said you're bipolar. But
Wow.
I didn't come to grips with that years later because it's part of the disease process that you don't accept your diagnosis. I think it's like 3.5 years for a female, 5 years for a male.
You're kidding.
So
Wow.
well, it's like me telling you like, hey, you're crazy. And how do you tell a crazy person they're crazy?
I'm crazy, dude.
Yeah, they're not
Right.
going to accept it because I've thought this way my whole life.
Wow. So you said for males it's longer or shorter?
I think it's about 5 years for a male.
Wow.
Females 3.5 years.
Wow. So you heard that diagnosis when you were
23, 24,
Okay.
around that age.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were finishing college or you were out of college?
I just finished college. I was 24, starting to DJ in the clubs.
Okay.
And that's a whole other story in itself. But yeah, 24 is when I got my diagnosis and didn't accept it until I was probably about 29 or 30.
Wow. Wow. And so tell me, in the college stage, between, all of these other medications that you shouldn't have been on and maybe misdiagnoses,
Yeah.
in that phase, did you feel like, you were able to finish college?
Yeah.
Right? That's
that.
crazy.
On a whim. I don't know
Wow.
how I finished college. It was with my friends helping me. I had high anxiety,
Yeah.
self-medicating with drugs, alcohol, marijuana.
I see.
Just to numb the pain.
Right.
There was always like this hole that I had that I couldn't fill with anything else, but I was just searching for that next high.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So you were just out of college when you got diagnosed, but you said you really accepted it later on. What was that? What was it, do you think, that kind of made it click for you?
There were certain events that happened, so they're all out of order because I can't remember the order of things, except that
Is that just, hey Curtis, Curtis doesn't remember things, or
I
is
can't
it a part of
remember.
it? Is it a part of your
I think it's part of the disease and part of the mental health, but
Yeah.
part of me just being a very terrible at remembering things. If I don't write it down, I'll forget.
Oh, wow,
Journaling was a big part of my life.
Got it.
Still is.
Yeah, right.
But journaling helped me remember and work through some of my problems.
I
But
see.
I ended up in drug rehab in 2014.
Okay.
That was a significant event. I think it was 2014, but didn't learn my lesson. I ended up at the Gooden Center for about 30 days after
Okay.
being admitted to the hospital.
Wow.
I've been in and out of the hospital. In 2017, I want to say 6 or 7 times I was on LOA from work. And,
Okay. Can you, with Elway, what is that?
leave of absence.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I was trying to get my mental health under control.
Yeah.
And then I had to leave work. And I never thought I would go back because it was so out of control.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, what you're telling me from 5, 6 years old to this point, it sounds hard, dude. That sounds
It was rough. Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah.
Oh man. And so I'm curious,
To fill in the gaps.
well, your relationship with your family and your friends, how were those relationships during that time? Like, did they notice things or
So my parents noticed things. They were always very supportive throughout. They would read books and
Wow.
always show up at the hospital when I would go missing. Have tons of stories of in between. So one time I was so out of it. Part of it is I wouldn't take my medication.
Okay.
So I take my medication, get stable, and then I think, oh, I'm not bipolar. and then stopped taking my medication.
Oh, so the medication you were taking
At the time.
when you got diagnosed bipolar,
Yes.
that medication.
So it would be Depakote, Zyprexa, Seroquel, those medications. So I would be on Depakote, Zyprexa, could be a month, 2 months, 3 months, I'm stable. And then I just stopped taking it abruptly. Yet Zyprexa headaches where like I had withdrawal symptoms, and then I was just like gaining a lot of weight.
Wow.
And then I was like, I'm not bipolar. I just...
Yeah.
different.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would stop taking my medication, end up in the hospital.
I see.
And a cycle of that for off and on, probably from, I want to say 2012 till 2017, 18 was
Wow.
a cycle of going in and out of the hospital. And I'm not talking about like the hospital where normal people go. I'm talking about locked facilities where you're not allowed out, 5150, 5250, where you're a grave danger to yourself, so they're not going to let you out. You don't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
And
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh man. So you said you've been in and out of those. So you know what it's like in there.
I know what it's like.
Yeah.
And I'm coming from a nurse perspective. It's not fun.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious. Yeah.
So one of the stories I had is the first one I went to was, I think it was Del Amo in Long Beach, and my first time there, I was probably just like, man, I just got too high, just smoked too much weed, and I was in there and they wouldn't give me Ativan to calm me down. So like, I was like, I need my Ativan, and I didn't know it wasn't due yet, or maybe it was due, and I was asking for it.
I see.
They wouldn't give it to me, so I took a poop on the floor.
Wow.
In the restroom.
Yeah.
And then some other guy like ran and told on me. I was like, what are you like? But they're like, he's acting up.
Right.
And they're like, that's the nurse. And
wow.
So they gave me the Ativan, but I just remember like bits and pieces of that admission. Smoke breaks were important. Smoking cigars. And
okay. Yeah.
So.
Wow, man, that sounds so hard. So it's almost like the diagnosis didn't make things better.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah. Not until you come to grips with it.
So that span of time between
24 to 29. There's a lot of gaps in my head where I'm like one time I was so out of it. I set off my alarm at my condo. I used to live in Anaheim Hills. Set off the alarm at my condo. Was outside walking my dog. Had a dog for about a week. I adopted it. Was out walking my dog. Cops showed up, and they're like, I was like, I'm just out looking for my dog. It's like in the afternoon, hot, and I was like in trouble, or I thought I was in trouble. They asked me what I was doing. I was like, I'm looking for my dog. My dog was inside. Had no idea.
Oh wow.
So out of it.
Yeah.
So I was asking for water, and they gave me water. Next thing I know, ambulance is showing up, taking me to a facility.
Wow.
Talked my way out of it at the facility.
Really?
Started walking home. Didn't know where I was.
Right.
Ended up in another facility the same day.
Wow.
So 2 hospitals in one day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So.
And so I'm sorry, man. That sounds really hard.
Yeah.
So, when did you feel like it started to settle? Like you accepted it, or you felt like?
I say 2017. I was in and out of the hospital about 6 or 7 times, but the thing that did it was I was out walking my dog again. In that year that I was hospitalized, I was so out of it, off my medication, high on marijuana. And I was walking my dog in the street, and then for some reason I came to a traffic light and started dodging traffic essentially, but everyone thought I was like trying to direct traffic, but I was really looking at the cameras because I thought I was going to die.
I see.
So I was like, the government's after me. That's part of the psychosis. The mental health or the disease process is you think the government's after you. It's like mirrors like they thought I was schizophrenic, high on meth.
Wow.
So it mirrors all those things.
Right.
Cops show up, put me in handcuffs, take me to the hospital, and then that was the last time I saw my dog. Take me to the hospital, end up in there probably 7 to 10 days. St. Joseph's, that's the hospital I felt safest at, St. Joseph's. So
Gotcha.
I ended up there. Part of it was they were like, you're going to become a conservatorship of the state, where essentially I would be able to work, but I wouldn't have my money in my possession or control.
Okay.
So they would have to decide what I do with my money.
Gotcha.
So from there, I like snapped out a bit, and I was like, you know what? I need to change something.
Wow.
Because I knew, being a nurse, what that meant to be a conservatorship of the state.
Yeah.
So from there, I came to grips with my diagnosis, got stable on my medication, found the right doctor, found a therapist. So I've been with that therapist about 7 years.
Wow.
Her name's Vanessa. She works
7 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh
So
my
I've been
gosh.
stable about 7 years.
Congrats,
on my
man.
medication.
That's crazy. Especially because, like you said, most of your life you felt not stable, right?
Yeah.
You felt like, did you ever feel like, is this just how everybody's life is? Or did you know that
I
there was
knew
something?
I was different. I just didn't know how different. And I knew that certain life choices I made could have contributed to the fact that, but I was just trying to escape reality. I was messing around with ecstasy, mushrooms, marijuana, cocaine, going to music festivals. I was DJing in my 20s. I thought I was going to become the next like Tiesto or Armin van Buuren, you know. Playing in the clubs, like some of the hottest clubs in LA and Orange County, like get a big head.
Yeah.
But
I mean, anybody, right? That
Yeah.
kind of happens for anybody, but with someone with that diagnosis, I'm sure it's even different.
Yeah.
It's different.
And I don't know how to explain being in mania other than that it's better than any drug you ever take, and it's better than having sex. Like when you're in that mental state, like nothing can stop you. You're invincible.
Right.
So that's why some people think they're Jesus.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's crazy to hear. Thank you for sharing all that with us. I think that most people wouldn't be able to survive that, I would imagine, you know?
A lot of them, other people, they end up either killing themselves or getting killed on the street or living with this disease their whole life.
Yeah.
They don't ever get the help they need or come to grips with the actual diagnosis.
The diagnosis, yeah.
So it is difficult. Bipolar especially. I'm not sure about schizophrenia. I've never had that, but I know it's similar to where if you don't accept the diagnosis and take your medication, because I take a medication to feel nothing.
Right.
To feel level, to feel normal, to have a little high, a little low, versus where I take like ecstasy or marijuana, mushrooms. It's like, oh, I'm gonna feel something.
Yeah, right.
And imagine being manic on ecstasy, on mushrooms, and
wow,
like, yeah, it's just a whole nother level.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I think another thing that is I'm very interested about your story is your faith. You know, both you and I have shared about our faith with each other, with our small group, in our church, with other people who have mental struggles or other, struggles with drugs or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I think stories of people who are Christians that have these mental illnesses,
the background,
right? I'd love to hear your story. I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about like when I was going through my mental health journeys. I really felt like far away, disconnected from God, and my faith was shaken a lot. And so I'm just curious, like your story with faith, along with all of this. Were you always a Christian, or?
So I accepted Jesus in my heart when I was 5. I was with my mom in her room, and it wasn't like I always walk with the Lord. It was kind of like my emergency blanket, like I got into heaven free card.
Yeah.
So in case I die, I know where I'm going.
Right.
That's how it was. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to just walk with the Lord and be evangelical and save all these people to come to Christ. Mm-hmm. It was more of like, okay, I have my get into heaven free card, and God's my emergency blanket. So whenever I get in trouble, he'll be there. Mm-hmm. So throughout my teens, really struggled with doubt if God was real. I had those other questions that we talk about apologetics now, right. Where like, if God's so good, why does he allow like this to happen? Or if God's so good, why did he make me this way?
Totally.
Or if God is so good, how come all this stuff is happening? So I was dealing with a lot of doubt in my teens, and I think that's where the cutting and the like the experimenting mm-hmm. with drinking, alcohol, drugs came into play, because I felt like I in a sense playing God myself, where I was just like, I'm just gonna try to escape this world and just numb the pain, essentially. God never turned his back on me. I know that. I felt the hand of God really on me when I was dealing with my bipolar disorder. There were situations I was put in, or that I was in, that I myself may have caused, that I know that without the hand of God, I probably would have never made it out. Especially like being in the back of that cop car thinking, in my head, I thought he was taking me to a lake to drown me.
Wow.
So
that's terrifying.
I was like, this is a dirty cop.
Yeah.
That's what I thought in my head. This is a dirty cop. He's taking me to a lake and he's going to drown me at the bottom of the lake.
Wow.
In this cop car. So I was just like crying. But I always felt Jesus there. In my darkest moments, it was always like he was calling me to do something better with my life. Not just throw it away with sex, drugs, alcohol,
Wow.
Very worldly view of things that I had early in life was to get as famous as possible so that I could walk in a room, I wouldn't have to introduce myself. That's how famous I wanted to be. Yeah. But realizing now, God was there the whole time, just calling me, like, follow me, and just to make disciples of his nations.
Crazy, man. That's, I think a lot of Christians struggle with that question of like, and you of anybody, right? God, why would you let this happen to me? Yeah. Why would you even let me go through this? And with wrestling with that, how have you come to a resolution? Are you still kind of wrestling with it? What narrative have you created for that?
So in the last 7 years, I'm really trying to draw myself closer to God. It hasn't always been easy. I still struggle with things, and I think one of them is money. Mm-hmm. So recently I just upped my tithe to the full 10%. I always tithe, but it was never the full 10%. So in a sense, I was making money my idol.
Dude, you're not alone there.
And I was like, I'm still trying to get right with God. It's a lifelong process, a lifelong journey. Yeah. But I definitely feel at peace in my heart where I know that he's watching over me, and just being able to step away from marijuana, ecstasy, mushrooms, even cigarettes.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times some of those things sound like, how bad could they be? You know what I mean? Like they sound harmless, but it sounded like in your situation they were causing disruptions in what God was trying to stabilize. Yeah. And so I'm curious, I felt this way when I was going through it. Like I said, I felt far away from him.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure there were moments where you felt far away.
I felt very far from Jesus when I was out partying, just racking up girls, trying to get another notch on my belt. It's a very worldly view of things that I had, but I always felt Jesus calling me, telling me like, hey, like this isn't right, like, you know, that's your sister or that's your brother, and
In Christ.
you know, I always felt him calling me. I just didn't always listen. Let's put it that way.
Totally. And I think, I was explaining this to my friend, I think when you are dealing with mental health issues, aside from drugs, alcohol, things that literally get you intoxicated, I think your mind really isn't fully sober in a sense when you are dealing with mental health, because you know, you're not thinking straight, you're not thinking logical, and so you know, I always found that, like you said, there were moments in my mental health journey that this you know, this low or this high felt like I couldn't like reach him, or I feel like I was too far away from him, or I was doing the wrong thing, and but one thing I remember was that he kept guiding me. You know, he was the one that I prayed, and he said, you need to be on medication. And so that's actually when I was like, I was totally scared to do that, because medication was for not people like me, but it definitely but so like hearing him for me was guiding me into stability was hard.
So for me, hearing God was more of like, excuse me,
you're good,
was more of like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that, or hey, like you should be doing this, like you should be out telling people about Jesus. And I think I've told you a couple times, I always felt like Jonah running away from Jesus, in the sense that he's calling me to tell others about Jesus, because I mean I accepted Jesus when I was 5. I had some sense to know that like, hey, this is the right path,
this is
but I didn't always like follow him.
Totally.
But that's part of the Great Commission, right? Find out the good word, tell other people about the good word,
totally
love Jesus, love God. That's the whole point of life. So
that's awesome, man. No, that's awesome. I was very encouraged to hear in your story that so you know, you hear about stories about people that are kidnapped, or people that go through these awful things and still cling to God through them. And I just, you know, in the Bible it talks about the saints, and I think those people are the saints, the people that go through hell and still decide to stick with God. And so when you told me your story, I was like, man, that sounds...
So a big influence on me was my mother and father. They would come see me in the hospital and they would bring me my Bible, because I'd ask for it, and then I'd read the Bible. But then when I got out, I wouldn't read the Bible, you know? So it was my emergency blanket of things, and they would always write Bible verses. I would go to Celebrate Recovery, do all the motions, but I didn't fully convict myself in my heart where I was like, okay, I'm bipolar and I need to follow Jesus. But I felt that huge disconnect. But my mother and father just being there, telling me Bible verses, singing Bible or hymns in the car on the way home from being in the hospital, like,
that's beautiful.
You know, like things like that. That's what really helped influence me to be closer to Jesus, is the example that my mother and father set forth.
Wow. And I mean, I think that's how God reveals himself to us, and like comforts us through our loved ones. And it sounds like through your parents, they sound like incredible people to stick through you with everything, and to stick, you know, trust Jesus with this whole process, because I'm sure there were times where
it was hard on them, because part of it is you get so irritable is that you just get mad at your loved ones. So I'd be yelling at my mom one minute, and then you know, and then telling her to go out the door
Wow.
and F herself. And then next thing I know, I'm in the hospital and she's showing up every day,
Wow.
bringing me my Bible and Bible
Yeah.
verses, you know. So it's part of the process is, yeah.
Wow. That's so awesome, man. I really got to meet your parents. They sound
Yeah.
really cool. I know that we said maybe, you know, it'd be cool
Yeah.
if we all got lunch sometime or something, but
Yeah.
are they local still or are they?
Well, my mother is still in Walnut. My
Right.
father passed away
Yeah, right.
in June.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll have to get together with my mom. She probably has more insight on
I'd
some
love
of
to
the
talk
things.
to her. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah, because her side of the story is
Mhm.
completely different than mine. There's obviously
totally.
the overlap is that I was in the hospital, but her perspective of the whole situation is completely different
Yeah.
than mine. Because I mean, I was yelling at her. I would yell at her, "Get out! I want to sell my condo.
Yeah.
Set this place on fire."
Wow.
You know.
Wow.
Or I would text her like, "Oh, I just crashed my car." Never crashed my car. I would
Oh.
post on Facebook like, "Curtis just died," things like that.
Wow, that's so scary.
Yeah.
For a mother to see and hear all that stuff, that's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
Wow, man. Yeah, I mean, you know, I know I wanted to ask you about that too, about your father. I know that was really hard for you. You know, we were talking about that before, and our group was praying for you, and I know that that's been tough. Did you feel like, did you feel worried about what that would do to your mental health, or
With my father passing?
yeah, yeah,
Obviously it's a huge loss, but as a Christian, you don't have to be worried because you know where he's going, right? So it's
Yeah.
almost like a celebration.
yeah, yeah,
We had a celebration of life in August for him, and I know he's up there looking down on me now and
Yeah.
just talking to Moses, God, and Noah, and all
Yeah,
his favorite apostles, you know, figuring
Wow.
out the universe. So
yeah.
it's a celebration when a Christian dies, but if you're an atheist or a non-believer, then it's obviously a sad thing when a person dies, you know.
Wow. Yeah. So, a couple last questions. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
You know, this conversation is to me so encouraging. It's like,
Yeah.
like I said, hearing somebody go through hell and come out the other side with God is incredible.
Yeah.
And it's something that, you know, I very, very little, I like not even close experience some level of feeling like on the edge of insanity during
Yeah.
my mental health journey.
Yeah.
And even with that, I felt so scared of like, man, am I going to stick to God with this?
Yeah.
So to hear you, what you've been through and your faith today, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, how we know each other, that's such an encouragement. But a couple questions before we finish up. One, when you think about all of this, when we talk about it, when you explain to someone, you know, I knew when I was little, I was cutting when I was 14, I was, you know, going through all these awful things all until, you know, even just 7 years ago.
Yeah.
How do you process that? How do you feel about
I mean, it defines me as a person. It builds character, you know, but it doesn't mark the rest of my life. So I'm here in the present, living day to day.
Yeah.
You know, that is a part of me and what I did and what's happened to me.
Yeah.
So it helps define my character,
Right.
but it doesn't make me to who I'm gonna be the
That's
rest of my
awesome.
life.
So you feel like you've created a narrative
Yeah.
for what has happened,
Yeah.
but you have hope
Yes.
for what's to come. That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
And then a couple other questions. I'm sure that either somebody, I hope that somebody watching this, and they haven't gotten help or gotten diagnosed, but they relate to some of the things that you were talking about, some of the, you know, highs that you were talking about, the lows, just some of your experience.
Yeah.
That they're hearing this. What advice would you give that person?
Just hang in there, you know, tell someone, speak up, because a lot of it was I was keeping that pain inside for 10, 15 years when I was young. But just being in a place that you're vulnerable to be able to talk to someone. If you feel brave enough, get a therapist. I think everyone should have a therapist, whether or not they think they have something.
Dude, I'm totally with you on that.
Everybody has something they need to work on.
Yes.
So I think everybody should talk to a therapist. But yeah, just feeling brave enough to at least tell a friend, like, hey, I'm struggling. I don't feel good today, and like this is what's going on. You know?
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I totally agree. I evangelize that all the time. Hey, get a therapist, bro.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. Sometimes you feel like maybe your thing isn't worth it.
Well, you don't know your blind spots, right?
Exactly.
So if you knew your blind spots, then you have eyes on the back of your head. But your therapist is going to tell you, like, hey, maybe it's this. Like, I talked to my therapist about, I forgot what it was. But her perspective was just like completely different than what I thought. And it just sheds light on the situation where it's like projections of, I guess someone was yelling at me, right? And I was bringing that up to my therapist, and they're like, well, maybe it's because they care, not just because they want you to be angry.
Total shift perspective that you couldn't get by yourself.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And someone you trust. I mean, this woman you said you've been with for like 7 years. Yeah. It sounds like you trust her.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have other therapists before
I've gone through about 6 or 7 therapists where it just didn't work out, or the cost was too high. But finding the one that you trust.
Stick to it, man. It's hard. It's really hard to find someone sometimes, but yeah, stick to it for sure. Yeah. That's cool. I'm telling everybody, if you need to find a therapist, you might go through 6 or 7 before you find the good one. But it's hard. It's a hard journey, but it's smart. It's important, you know.
Yeah.
And then lastly, you talked about your mom and your dad and what they did for you, and how God met you through that, and how their patience was so good. What kind of advice would you have for family members who have someone going through this, who maybe aren't diagnosed, aren't taking medication, and you know they can't force them.
It's tough. Just don't give up on them. That is not the person you think they are, and the things they say they don't mean. You know, there's things I've said I can never take back, but I never meant them. But in that manic mindset, you say things to hurt people. Sometimes it really comes out, and you know, but any family members that are dealing with a family member going through this, just stick with them and know that that's not their true self.
Wow. Okay. That's so good. Well, thank you, Curtis, so much for sitting down and chatting with us. I mean, I have like thousands of other questions, but we'll be here for like 3 hours. But thank you so much. I hope and I pray that people hear your story and are encouraged, feel hope, and get help.
Yeah. Thank
you, man. Appreciate it, dude.